And hello, everyone, and welcome back to We Love PMO, the show where we simplify the complex world of project, program, and PMO management. I am your host, Sarah, and if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button so you don't miss any notifications for when a new episode is released. And in today's episode, I have a special guest. Bernadette Barber, the founder of Zero2Projects, and Bernadette brings over 25 plus years experience in project management across the whole wealth of different sectors. And I look forward to finding out more about her journey in project management and her story and her career and what qualities that she looks for when she's looking for project managers within her own business. So welcome, Bernadette. It's lovely to have you here today.
Thank you, Sarah. It's good to be here at last.
Brilliant. So we'll get right started. So could you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your company, Zero2Projects?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bernadette Barber, and I'm the CEO and founder of Zero2Project Consultants. And we essentially provide project management services to the corporate marketplace and public sector in the UK and into some European countries. So it's mainly providing interim project management resources, either on a what we call like a resource on demand engagement, which is just basically giving companies, project managers to work with them, or we go in and deliver the full end-to-end project management solution. My background, as you mentioned, I've had over 25 years plus in project management. I started my career in the late 80s, as a software developer and a systems architect. So I started in a technical background. And then I went into project management by accident, really. I was handed a project to deliver that was, pretty challenging at the time. So I think you call it these days an accidental project manager. So I started down that journey into project management. And then I went to work for a service provider. And I was very fortunate that they were, to say it was 25 years plus ago, they were very mature in their delivery mechanisms and their methodologies. So that to me is where I really learned my craft and really learned the expertise to deliver successful projects time and time again. So I've worked across, as you mentioned, many sectors. I've delivered many different technology stacks, from data center migrations to what I'd consider workplace technology. So end user device migrations. I've done software implementations. On a bigger scale, I've done company integrations where they've done mergers and acquisitions and just applied my frameworks to a bigger piece of work. So 25 years of delivering big global programs. I felt I wanted to really set up a business that we could deliver that same kind of quality to companies. So help them deliver the quality that they needed in their projects, but also really to help project managers. So we go through an assessment process with our project managers. So they're kind of considered a registered associate with us, but we don't put them into a project and check on them once a month. We actually provide governance across that framework and advice. So it was more not just delivering projects to the corporate marketplace, but also kind of uh, bringing on project managers. So if they're put into a situation, we could help them. We could sit on steering groups. We could provide guidance on governance. And in the last couple of years, we've gone into developing training programs and coaching, mentoring services for project managers. So we've got the consultancy side of the business, which is project managers going into companies. Then we have the training and the coaching side as well.
Do you have a preference that you prefer? Do you prefer the sort of the resource management side, or do you prefer the coaching and sort of like the guidance
I
side?
think I think the resourcing side is really, it still is very it's just really good to know that you can go into a company and fix the problems, and you can see things with all that experience, and you can get things done really quickly. You can assess things really quickly. So there's always that really good buzz. But I think the coaching is, I would say, equally rewarding, because you're guiding people through things that you forget that people don't know this stuff. So after 25 years, you just do things by default, but kind of guiding people and coaching people. I enjoy that, and I enjoy it particularly because it's considered situational coaching. So we don't kind of go in and say, okay, you need to develop stakeholder skills. It's kind of what's going on in your project right now, right here. How can we help? How can we give you the guidance to get over a challenge? Or how can we make sure that you don't trip on that next stage, having a look around corners for them? So it's basically giving them that education, but it's real life situational coaching. And I think the biggest part for me, and I know you say you've worked in the same environment as I have, is it can be incredibly stressful if you don't get the right training and coaching. So for me, just reducing that stress and making it a much more inspiring environment for them to work in is really rewarding for me.
Yeah, definitely. It can be so stressful, especially like you said. And I find many project managers that I've come into contact with, they've become an accidental project manager
Yeah,
and it's completely new to them. And something's come out, some sort of problem's occurred, and they need to create something to fix that problem
yeah,
on
yeah,
top of their day job. And then they're suddenly dropped into that world. And, it can be very stressful, especially if you don't understand the terminology, how the culture sort of works there. And, especially if they don't have that understanding of how to actually manage the expectations of the stakeholders, but actually how to manage the stakeholders as well and to keep that comms going. Especially when it's new to them, and that scope creep can then suddenly come in because they haven't had that, like you said, that situational sort of training and how to
yeah.
overcome those hurdles and challenges.
I think for me as well, you have to know what you don't know. In my early career, when I was kind of transitioning from a technical architect role into projects, I was given a project that, in hindsight, I should never ever have accepted it. It was well beyond my skill set at that time. I hadn't got any methodology training, and it was a complex international infrastructure and software upgrade with all the challenges that a global project brings you. And you have to know what you don't know. And that's not to say I wouldn't encourage people to go for big jobs and do but you have to be ready for it because you just end up with a huge confidence knock, and you end up with reputational damage in some areas. So I think for new project managers, particularly, you've got to know what you don't know. I find that as well.
Definitely. And also, I think if you don't have access to that subject matter expert as well,
Yeah,
because we're quite
yeah,
generalists sometimes, where,
yeah,
when you're managing a number of different projects, and if it's, I don't know, software development, and you've never done software development, you don't know the technical specifications or that language,
yeah,
not having that SME there that you can draw upon their expertise just puts you in such a vulnerable position as a project manager as
yeah.
well.
It does, and I always encourage people, particularly the project managers that I coach, is that before you start a project, and something I always used to do, is I really research the organisation. If you're new to the organisation or you're an interim contract project manager, but also really research the technology. So there is a view that you don't have to be technical, and I do agree with that because your job is to sit over the SMEs. But I do think you have to have a level of understanding of the language that is going to be used. I think you have to have some credibility there in that area. So I always encourage them to do a lot of research before they step into day one of a project.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, have a
Yeah.
look before. Yeah, look what's in there first.
Yeah.
Um, so no, that's a really helpful introduction, and you've talked us through a bit of your journey as well into project management. But is there anything that really kind of drew you into project management? Because if you've done it for 25 plus years, you must, like myself, I quite often say I'm a bit of a geek. I love it. I
Yeah.
find it so interesting, and I could talk about
Yeah.
it for hours and hours.
Yeah.
So what kind of drew you to it? Why are you passionate about it?
I think that initial project that was just huge, Sarah. It was enormous, complex project, and the only thing that saved me from complete career destruction was the company was bought out and they stopped the project. That was the only thing
Oh,
that somebody was looking out for me, and I thought, well, I I would like to learn how to do that properly. And I thought with my strong technical background, I would be a really good technical PM. or a PM over any kind of subject matter, whether it's company integrations or technology projects. So I wanted to train to do it properly. And I was already working for a service provider, a big technology company who are investing a lot of time and money in building frameworks and building all the extra bits that you don't get in your methodology. So I think this is going to be such a good time to get in and do that. And my first role, I went on to maternity leave as a technical architect, and I went through an assessment centre to become a project manager when I was when my baby was like 9, my daughter was like 9, 10 months old. And I got the role. So when I first came back from work after maternity, I was straight into a project
Straight
management
in,
role.
hitting the ground
Yeah,
running.
yeah. And I was met with a sponsor who, for some reason, assumed I wasn't technical. Um, and he was speaking to my manager and said, I don't really want her to do it. I need somebody who can get on and change domain names and configure printers. We need a hands-on project manager, not having any knowledge of my background and the level I'd worked at. So
Yeah,
he made a big assumption
just
about
make an
me.
assumption about you.
Yeah. And I had a really good manager at the time, and he said, if I find any of my project managers configuring printers and changing domain architectures, they'd be in a disciplinary. He said that's not their job. And the minute that if Bernadette touches that, which she's quite capable of doing, that's her accountability then, as opposed to giving it to the subject matter expert whose job it is.
Yeah,
So it was a difficult one, but it kind of made me all the more determined to get it right and do it right, and just continue on. And the more and more projects you do, the knowledge is just great to take into your next one, the next one. And I ended up doing a lot of recovery work. And I would always recommend, if anybody gets the chance to do recovery work, and by that I mean go into a project that's failing or is in trouble, and you're tasked with turning it around, assessing what the issues are and turning it around. When you start to do that kind of work, you really understand what it is that makes it go right, because you see there's consistent themes in projects that are going off the rails and going wrong. It's just consistency. It's exactly the same issues every single project. So I got into that, and that really interested me. I was really, really fired up with that kind of work. So it wasn't kind of going in and setting it up; it was going in and turning projects
turning
around.
it around.
Well, I
Yeah.
liked. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that.
And that's got its own, that's quite stressful as well, depending on who's asked you to come in that sort of turnaround mode, and if they've got a strict sort of timeline as well of trying to pull that sort of recovery.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've kind of written papers on that as well, in terms of if you're going into a recovery situation, this is the framework, these are the kind of things you need to be asking. But in terms of the people side of it, it's very sensitive. It's incredibly sensitive, because the people that have created that issue in the project are generally not the people that can fix it, or else they would have done. So
Yeah.
you've got a whole raft of delicate conversations, and my kind of go-to would be, I'll pick this up and do the assessment sitting next to me, as opposed to, you go
Yeah.
and do something else, sit next to me and just look. So you make it a learning experience if you can, but you have to, without exception, stop. You have to convince the stakeholders you have to stop, and let's take
And
an
that's
assessment.
something organizations, I know with the number of ones that I've worked with,
Yeah,
they're not that great at actually pulling the plug and sort of saying, we're stopping on this now. It's, they,
reputation. Well, yeah,
yeah, and they just keep it going, even though you can clearly see it's failing, it's draining the resource, the budget. Um, yeah, but
but the
to
more
trying to sort of make them see the benefits of that
yeah,
is quite a
you
change.
have to be strong in that regard. And I just think with the recovery work particularly, you do have to highlight the risks of not stopping. So you really do have to say, we have to stop, make an assessment. We can do some things in parallel. We can still do some things, but we really have to put the brakes on this and turn it around. And the more experience you get as a project manager, the quicker you can do things. You can walk into a situation and assess it really quickly. It doesn't take you 3 weeks to get under the skin of something, because you know to ask the right questions. because now that's the good benefit of kind of being in it for many, many years. You can
Yeah, and it's
tell.
that building that confidence up, that leadership skill to actually feel, actually, even
Yeah,
though, if you come in from a recovery sort of perspective, you've got a
yeah,
room
yeah,
full of people that have worked together maybe for years and years, and they have a cultural way of working,
yeah,
to
yeah,
be able to speak up and say, actually, this is where it's gone wrong, and this is the
yeah.
areas that you need to focus on, and having that confidence and belief in yourself that
Mm,
actually you are on the right path there with the
yeah,
things that you're picking up on,
yeah.
and we've had discussions before, that's not taught to you in your traditional
No,
types of
no,
project
no,
management
no. No.
courses at all, that leadership skills of like intuition and
Yeah,
having that confidence of how to speak and how to lead.
yeah. I remember having a conversation with one stakeholder, and he said, it took me about 3 days to do a full assessment on the program because I asked the right questions. I get all the key people lined up, I get them back to back in rooms, and we have these conversations. And he was kind of inferring that I charged him a lot of money for 3 days. And I said, I haven't, you haven't paid for 3 days, you paid for 25 years. Because it would have taken somebody else, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months to do, to get into that detail.
Yeah.
But
Or
that,
not
that
even actually lift the lid on the bits that actually were the problems. If they didn't have that,
yeah,
arsenal of knowledge that you've got
yeah,
from, many years of working on different types of projects.
yeah, definitely, yeah.
So within your kind of early career, is there any particular challenge that kind of, I know you've sort of spoken a bit about about that first sort of role that you had after your maternity leave. Is there any other sort of key challenges that sort of pop into your head that you feel like you overcame well, and kind of boosted up your confidence in yourself as a project
Yeah.
manager?
I think we could do a whole podcast on this. I'll give you the highlights. I think because bearing in mind this was the early 90s, companies were not familiar or educated on a methodology. So they didn't understand what you were bringing, and it was seen as a delay. It was seen as an unnecessary overhead to a project because they've just delivered the project. So you had to really articulate why you were doing certain things and what the risk is of not doing it. So there was a big adoption problem there. Not so much nowadays, because people expect a project manager to come in and deliver against a framework and a methodology and bring all their experience. So there was a huge adoption problem back in the early 90s. And also, we were dealing with SMEs and particularly kind of technical architects, software engineers that have always just delivered the projects themselves. And it's kind of, well, I've always delivered it, so why do we need a PM coming in and putting an
Mm.
extra layer over it? So it was a huge education, not just for stakeholders and your team members, but also for the business. And so I used to put like a presentation together and talk to them about how I would run this. And I still do that from day to day if I do any delivery work. I kind of put together a presentation to the project team about how I'm going to deliver it, what they can expect from me, what I expect from them, what documentation we're going to be using, what the standards are, what the data repository is, what the security is. So all the things around the stuff that you do, Sarah, in like a PMO environment. And then I speak to the stakeholder and say, this is how we're going to run it. And it's just really that it goes from those early days of people not really understanding. So
Yeah.
probably don't need to do it as much now, but I think it gives people confidence if you start pretty much within week one and you start and present and do a 15-20 minute pitch on how you're going to manage this. It does instill confidence in people.
Definitely. And I think, like you said, not maybe as much a problem now, but there are still organisations that project management is new to them. And they're just starting to, they may have been running projects for a long time, but they didn't realise that they were projects, didn't realise like the barriers that they were sort of hitting, and, why money's kind of spilling out, and, over time scales and stuff like that. So then when you kind of, you know, say to them, have you thought about having a project management framework or a PMO in place? They're so used to their old ways of working, and trying to change that kind of culture of, it's not bureaucracy, it's going to help you, and it's going to give you transparency, it's going to give you an audit trail, but also it's going to put a bit of a safety net around that person who is going to be responsible for leading on that change.
Yeah. Yeah, it's come a long way in fairness in 25 years. It's really come through in terms of companies' education and expectation now. And that's good to see.
So in your experience, what are some of the most sort of common pitfalls that project managers encounter? And if you were to pick, say, maybe two or three of them, how could they be avoided?
I would say, uh, without question, the biggest one is they don't get initiation right. You don't get that right, it's very hard to recover. So if you don't have a strong initiation, which is driven by effective questioning by a project manager, you have to ask all the right questions of all the right people. It leads to a whole myriad of issues. So you've got poor scope definition, which means the budgets and the timelines are going to be out because the scope's not detailed enough. You get a lack of stakeholder trust. You get incomplete risk profiles. You get inaccurate dependency management frame. It spawns a whole stack of issues if you don't get that beginning of a project right. So I would always say to people, you have to learn how to do that well. And you and I have spoken before about the methodologies now on the market is you have to have strategies that you can either learn from people like us or a mentor of some description of how you're going to really kick off a project and initiate a project. So you get it wrong at that stage, and it's just pretty hard to recover from. And most of my recovery work, that was got to be the one element that kick-started the need for a piece of
Yeah.
recovery work. So I think the initiation is just, you've got to get it right.
I completely agree with you. So from like a PMO perspective, so if the number of sort of health checks I've done on projects, scope is an area where quite often it ends up failing, particularly when we're having a look at that development and control stage to sort of understand why is this an exception, why has it gone off, and when we start to go back through that project documentation, and sometimes there isn't even a scope at all. It's not been defined and it's not really clear what's in and out, and it's just completely grown arms and legs. And when you ask them, what what are you trying to do, and they can't answer it, you know they're in trouble.
But there's a whole stack of reasons why that project at the beginning is going to go wrong. So if you look in some of the organisations I've worked in, I come into land as an interim program director, and they say we've got a strategy which is X, Y, Z, and we've spawned a program out of it, and we've got 12 projects underneath it or whatever, and they've already assigned a budget, and it's like we haven't started yet. They've got a two-page business case, assigned a budget to it, so that in itself is fundamentally flawed. Because you then go in and, to your point, you take the lid off it and you ask all the right questions and you do all your definition workshops and you start developing your documentation. Everything comes out of that, and you think, well, that the budget is not going to be sufficient to cover what you need to cover because they don't go into it in that detail.
Yeah, it's like a finger
Strategy,
in the air quite often, isn't it? An
yeah, it is.
indicative floating cost, it's at between 50 to 100K because they've not done that
Yeah,
cost benefit analysis. And
yeah.
I find quite often as well when reviewing business cases, particularly from that budget aspect, they they don't think about the long term. So we're going to be producing a product within this project that we want the business to be using on a day-to-day basis, but we've only put the costings in from a project perspective. We've not thought about how it transitions into business as usual and what recurrent cost is going to be and what resources needed. And then they wonder why they have products that are not fit for purpose at the end of the closure. And it just goes right back, like you said, the most important bit there is that scoping from the beginning and being really clear at that sort of kickoff meeting and those plans that it's well thought out. But yes, it blows my mind sometimes the amount of organizations that have sort of on the back of a fag packet sort of style business cases for a program which has got loads of projects underneath. And
I mean, when I go into that situation, I kind of, and if it's a new company that I'm working with, we kind of go in and say, we get the strategy, we get the business drivers, we get the objectives and the goals. Now we're going to go away and we're going to scope this out for you, and we're going to cost it, and we're going to put a resource model around it for you. And then we'll come back and we'll stress test your assumptions and your budgets and everything. So we set the expectation, and then you go back and you present the scope of what you're going to deliver, the cost, the resource model, all the rest of it, and the risk profiling. And that can be a bit of a shock to the system, but do it at that stage, because they can make a decision whether they go ahead with it or not, or whether it's a viable project, or they go back and then reassign the budget, But you have to do that piece of work, even if you're involved in developing the business case. There's another element to that. So if you're lucky enough to have a company that says, "Oh, come in, Sarah, and help us develop the business case. Here's the strategy. Here's the objective. Help us put the business case together, the ROI." So you get to be part of that as opposed to being handed it
Yeah.
to you. That's one thing. But the second part of it is there's not many companies that understand to the detail their own estate. So by that, I mean, if you look at technology projects, for example, there could be applications out there that they don't know are out there. It's a bit more controlled now in these sort of more recent times. There could be devices out there they don't know that's out there. Things like what I would class as assistive technology, so plug-in card readers and spurious printers and things like that. And if you don't understand what's out there, who uses it, who interfaces with who, to HR hook into finance, to finance hook into HR, you don't understand all those kind of components. You can scope it as much as you like and cost it as much as you like, but if you don't understand that bit, you're going to go straight into change control, which you should do, once you start hitting those business areas. So I think it's two things. I think it's a strategy with a business case at a high level, the budget assigned that hasn't been gone into any detail. And then you get companies that don't fully understand the estate, and they're not keeping it from you. They don't understand, especially the bigger companies, like
Yeah.
big global companies. They don't understand what's out there, so you can't do an impact assessment of the change because you don't have the data. So there's two things there that really make it a little bit tricky when you're starting if you don't ask the right questions.
And also, I think another sort of important sort of factor that some people sometimes miss off from a business case perspective is that prioritization as well, and sort of asking those sort of questions, which comes back to that viability. How complex is it going to be?
Yeah.
What risks are there, and are those risks worth sort of taking? So having that risk-based sort of approach as well. So as somebody, so within Zero2Projects, I know, so you have a number of interim sort of project managers that work with you. What sort of qualities do you tend to look for when selecting your candidates for like temporary project roles?
Um, I want to talk about CVs if I can as well. I know it's not qualities, but there's things in there that I think we see all the time that are just like huge red flags for us on a CV. But in terms of qualities, I'm not particular. I am interested in the methodologies. I want somebody who's obviously got accreditations, but I'm looking for at least 5 years experience in terms of the level of experience they've had, because they're representing our brand. They're going into companies and representing us. So we want a good 5 years on any level, whether that's, we provide obviously project coordinators, project managers, program managers, etc. So we want kind of a good 5 years in there. I look particularly for excellent written and verbal communication skills. It's absolutely essential for me. And you can tell on the written skills the way somebody's CV is presented. I looked at one this morning, it was 7 pages, 8-point font, and it was like streamline the thing so you can get a sense of how good they are at presenting. You have to present really well your documentation. So when I'm presenting to a board of directors, it's clean, it's professional, it's well architected, it's at the right level. If anybody asks me to drop into detail, I've got all that detail. So the ability to present really well structured documentation is really key. And I think layering on top of that, I want to see some really good stakeholder management. I want to see evidence of people that have managed difficult stakeholders, that have brought stakeholders on side. And then that also cascades out to the project team. Have they got the ability to build and manage and develop and work with a good project team as well? So we don't go into the methodologies at all. We really don't get into that. And I think one of the key questions I always ask is, it's week one on a new project. Tell me how you would approach it. That's my
That's a
question.
really good question.
Yeah. How would
Yeah.
you approach it? Talk me through week one. What's the first thing you do? So I'm not looking for, I set the database up and, we know where we're going to store the documents, and that's part of it, I know. But it is more, how do you, what do you do with that business case you've been handed? And it's so telling. What's that first week look like? So it's all about the softer skills and the challenges they've overcome. And we get a lot of CVs that come through that they're just really reciting what's in a methodology. I produced a RAID log, I produced a PID, I did a risk price. That's the tools. It's not the skills. It's the tools of the job.
Yeah.
It's like saying to an accountant, give me some view of your experience over the last 5 years. They say, well, I use Sage and then I use SAP and it's like, what did you do? How did you impact that? So we're keen to get beyond the methodologies and really understand what challenges, how they approach a piece of work, and then talk about the challenges. Now, particularly look for that in CVs is every project. I want to see a consistency in a job title and progression. So you could go coordinator,
Yeah.
you know,
Sort of junior,
yeah.
working upwards. Yeah.
So I like to see that progression, but I want to see in that list of things, I want to see how they've managed challenges, what they've learned from each project and taken on to the
It's that
next.
star approach, isn't it? You want to be able to pick out some situations that they've got.
Yeah,
So, just in case our listeners don't know, situation, how they've approached it, what's the result, and yeah, that's what you want to be able to see. But streamlined, like you said, those key sort of highlights of,
yeah,
as yes, you are in a team as a project manager, but what have you done in the past? What have you
yeah,
achieved
yeah.
by them having you as a PM?
It's just, some people are natural communicators. They just are. I think it is quite a natural skill. But it is something you can learn. So really look for people that are just excellent communicators, and I want somebody who's going to be got a really good balance of being firm, not scared to make decisions, not scared to call things out, not scared to admit mistakes. When I start a piece of work, I always have a little speech for the project team that I start with, and it goes on the lines of, this project will have a no blame culture because the
That's
difficult
so
people will be there.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there'll be no blame. Put your hand up if you've dropped the ball. We will all drop the ball around this table at some point in this project. Probably me more than most of you all. I always put that in. But we're here to support each other, and I create that supporting culture. I don't want backbiting. Don't tolerate any of that. So it's getting all that kind of, and I want to see that in my PMs. I want to see them going into companies, and because we provide project management services to companies, I need people who have got good client facing skills on top of their project
On top
management
of the
skills.
PM
Yeah.
skills.
So
Yeah.
we don't touch on methodology. I don't talk about RAID logs, PIDs. I talk about everything else, but
Yeah. I mean, and it's going to be different, isn't it? Depending on the organization they're walking into, they could be using a multitude of different methodologies or their own. So, yeah, it's just having that kind of understanding of how to be able to tailor and take those soft skills, as you said, into that. Um, I just have a couple more questions for you,
yeah, sure.
sort of Bernadette. So, what do you find the most rewarding about project management and coaching?
I think, as I mentioned, I think going into an organisation and knowing that you can really affect the change, you can transform the business if you're into a transformation program. Um, and that is rewarding, that you can go in and you can deliver it and you can come out and you've just done a great job. I like the fact that you meet new people, especially as an interim. You meet lots of new people. You get lots of different experiences managing kind of different personalities. And it's a strange one, really, because when you leave an organisation, if you've been an interim project manager, even a permanent one, people expect you to have done the job that you've done, if that makes sense. So your project's gone great, it's a success, the business is well received, everything's gone great. They expect that of you. But some companies don't realise how, not rare, but how much the project failure rates are still high.
Yeah.
There's a still high percentage of project. So there you walk away and get you some nice flowers and things like that, and then that's great. We'll see you next time, and you've done the job that you went in to do. But they expect that of you, but they think there's not an appreciation that actually you've looked round corners, you've foreseen things, you've managed situations that have got you to that position. So that's kind of on the delivery side, and I think on the coaching side, it is about really. I like to accelerate people. I don't want people to take 25 years to learn what I've learned.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, okay, let's look at the situation. This is what we're going to be doing. Next time you do this, I want you to do that. I want you to go into this situation. I want you to adopt this process. I want you to have a look at this template we've created and use that. It'll prompt you on questions and things like that. So I want people to accelerate to a stage where they're progressing their career, they're earning more and more money, and they have less and less stress in the delivery model. And then they can then in turn mentor people. So, as I mentioned before, I've worked for a big service provider when I first went into project management, and they were very mature. And I kind of put that early experience down to my success and my career development. And I love that acceleration. You can just take a situation, people come on calls and the stress, the concern, and you go, okay, this is how you manage it. And then you can see the whole stress just disappearing. So I like all that. Love that.
Yeah, it sounds really, yeah, it's rewarding, isn't it? Sort of seeing that person's confidence go, but actually
Yeah,
seeing them take great strides and
yeah,
sort of, you're giving them that hand up to achieve the goals that you know that they can and
yeah.
to, yeah, get what. So you're currently in the process at the moment of putting together a course,
I do,
leading
yeah.
with impact. So did you want to just give a brief sort of overview of this course?
Yeah, yeah. We're going live soon. I'll let you know. It's all ready to go. But I felt as though that there's a huge gap in the market for the actual educational skills that project managers need. So leading with impact is all about it's all about starting strong and the strategies for starting strong. So we've built templates that come with the course that will talk about these are the key things that you need to tick off when you're starting a project. These are the key. We give them a set of questions to ask. So it's nothing to do with methodologies, nothing at all. It's all strategies and tools for managing projects outside of the methodologies. So we talk about how to engage with stakeholders. We teach the project setup I spoke about. This is how I'm going to run the project. Always do that. Give the speech. Go to the stakeholders. Tell them how this is what you do here. This is how you do that. So we do the whole stakeholder management piece. We do the whole business engagement piece. We even talk about effective questioning and how to be an effective questioner. So we talk about 7 layers deep. So, obviously it's pretty obvious you don't ask closed questions, but it's kind of, if you're delivering a technology product, have you asked X, Y, Z? So it's almost a step by step of, have you asked these kind of questions?
Yeah.
And then hand in hand with those questions is, do you know how to write effective documentation? Because if you haven't written it down somewhere in some form, and that's a really easy thing to understand for stakeholders and your project teams and the business, then you're missing something there. You're creating gaps for confusion and ambiguity that you might not find out until you're ready to try and lead the project. So we teach as part of initiation. The module's called Start As You Mean to Succeed, and it goes back to that initiation again. We give them all the tools and frameworks about the kind of things you should be asking. Have you done X, Y, Z, A, B, C? How to manage conflict in a team, how to build a good project team. We do communication planning. So there's project team communications, there's business engagement and communications. So we do all that. We do starting as you mean to succeed, effective questioning, uh, writing concise, clear documentation, management of stakeholders, and there's a whole kind of templates that goes with it. And we put something in there which is almost just comes part of one of the PDFs that comes with the course, but it's it's like a lifelong journal, if you like, for project managers. So you go through the lessons learned as you're going through the project. But you may deliver 8, 9, 10 projects over the years. And we teach people to go in at the end of the project and just journal what was successful about it and why, and what was challenging and why. And it does two things. It's great for the CV when you want to go back and
Yeah.
everything that I told you about. And if you're 7 years since you applied for a job, it's good for that. It's good to see how far you've come through that journey in terms of how much have I learned, how much have I overcome. And it's a confidence booster as well to think I have actually managed a lot of difficult situations.
Definitely. That journaling. I mean, even in your day-to-day life, journaling is so helpful, especially when you've been in a stressful situation, just to
Yeah,
unload everything,
yeah,
but then be able to look back to see how you've actually overcome those challenges and what you did and what you've achieved and what you thought at the start was going to be so difficult. And sometimes, when you're given a project to sort of lead on and you think, how on earth am I going to do this? And you do it and you
yeah,
do it well. So yeah, that's such a
yeah.
great tip for
So we've got
people
we've
to
got
sort
a
of
template
have.
there. We've got a template for a journal, and we call it a lifelong lessons learned. So keep doing it. I mean, I keep all the nice notes and letters and things that I get when I leave a company as an interim. You get so many nice, kind of plaudits and things. I always keep all those, and they're just good to go back if you're having a rough day or you're having a difficult time.
Definitely. And you can draw upon them in an
Yeah,
interview as well. Like, this is the feedback that I've received after, accomplishing this.
yeah,
But if that course sounds like it's going to be so beneficial to so many people that
yeah.
are,
I hope
looking
so.
to start their
Yeah,
journey in project
and
management or who are already in there.
it's everything. It's not anything to do with any methodology. We don't touch on
And I
it at
think that's what scares people off sometimes when it's something that is just sort of like methodology driven, where this is those kind of more human skills that you need and are transferable into other careers if you decide to move out
I
of project
agree, yeah.
management.
And I think one of the big things that we talk about in initiation, and we put it into the startup of a project, is how are you going to get out? What's your exit criteria? Because it might sound premature to do it at the beginning, but it's not. I've gone through projects and I've gone through recovery projects where you get to the end and people have said, well, I was expecting that and I was expecting this. So one of the key things for stakeholder engagement on the stakeholder module is ask them what they're expecting. What would it take for that stakeholder to sign off on this project? So you've got to understand the quality criteria and the sign off. Do I need to transfer into a service desk? Do I need to transfer into BAU? So there's all that going into it as well. But it's not just kind of what I class as softer skills. It is structure and strategies and techniques that have worked for years and years for us. So it's hopefully people will find it useful.
So what we'll do is I'll drop your details in the description below,
Oh
Bernadette. So then if anybody's interested in sort of going on a wait list or finding out more about it,
yeah,
they'll be able to link in with you. So we're just coming up to the 45-minute mark now. So I'm just gonna wrap up for today's episode.
okay,
And
yeah,
it's been really lovely talking to you. And I know we've discussed offline that you and I are probably going to come together a few times
I think
over
so.
the coming months
Yeah,
to talk about other topics. If you have found this episode helpful, or if there's a specific topic you'd like us to explore in future episodes, please let us know. And don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button. Thank you so much, Bernadette, for today. It's been an
you're
absolute pleasure
welcome.
speaking
Thank
to
you for
you.
hosting
I
me.
feel like I've learnt loads as well. Um, so, yeah.
All right,
Bye for now, and thanks for listening. And I'll see you all in the next one.
thank you, Sarah. Take care. Bye bye.